the thing to go live because you say it's live, but it doesn't come up on mine until like 10 seconds later.
Okay.
That's why there's always like a lag between me saying something and you being like, "Go."
All right.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to On the Warning Track, a weekly baseball podcast recapping the biggest baseball news of the last week. I'm Jacob Bullinger. I am the team writer and team manager for the Pittsburgh Pirates here at Armchair All Americans. With me, as always, is my co-host Donnie Menke.
I am the content writer and the team manager for the Reds here at Armchair, and I'm the only one, so only Reds writer.
So we're both writers for Armchair All Americans, which is what creates this podcast. Um, and so we are here to give you all the baseball knowledge you need before the playoffs start tonight, which is when we're recording, is Tuesday. So this will probably be out after the game's already over. So we won't go too in depth into the American League game because we don't want to be behind the curve. But we are going to recap the end of the season, and we're going to talk about some playoff baseball. I don't know about you, Donnie, but I'm so pumped. I'm so ready for the wild card games. I'm so ready for the playoffs. I was the last year. I don't think you could beat last year going down to Game 7. But even then, I still just enjoy the hell out of really good baseball, and this is as good as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't help that even though things have looked exciting for the last 2 months, nothing actually changed. So it was exciting. It was close, and then the Cubs hung. The Cubs kept the lead. The Dodgers kept the lead. Nationals, it was never really a thing. Diamondbacks and Rockies held on. Yankees and Twins were always in the top two. Red Sox, Indians, I mean Astros, like nothing. It's been set for weeks. Even though it did get exciting, it was set for weeks. So it's kind of nice to just get down to the nitty gritty of it.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. I think that might be part of the reason why I'm so excited because usually in September, the last couple of weeks, you're like, oh, it's getting really close, and these teams are life and death, and it really wasn't like that. And a couple of weeks ago, we thought that the American League wild card was going to come down to the last day with like six different teams, and then it was already settled by Saturday night, or actually, I think it was Friday night.
Yeah.
It was a snoozer to the end of the season. So I'm glad it's over. I'm ready for some playoff baseball. I'm ready to see some intense games. So the season is over. So let's recap the standings real quick so we know where everyone finished and we know who's in the playoffs.
Well, the Dodgers all year looking like they're on a historic win, on a historic winning. I apologize. They're on a historic run through 50 games, 43-7. They're looking like they're going to break the all-time win record, and then September they just August, September they just fall flat. They still hold on and clinch the best record in the MLB with 104 wins. The two teams behind them, though, the Indians and the Astros, both cracked 100 wins. So they held on, but not by much. The Indians had 102 and the Astros had 101, so they were both right on their heels. Nationals, normally 97 wins get you a pretty good shot at home field advantage. Not this year. After that, the Red Sox 93, Diamondbacks in a wild card spot with 93 wins. Cubs win 92, hold off the Brewers, who were very surprising this year. Finished with 86. Then the Yankees and Rockies, the last two wild card teams. The Yankees The Yankees were the top wild card team with 91. The Rockies and the Twins were the last two. Both had at least 85 wins. So the Rockies had 87, Twins had 85. So it's not like it. I mean, it was pretty strong toward the top. I mean, toward the bottom, it wasn't very good. There were 5 teams that didn't finish with at least 70 wins. But toward the top, it's a dead heat right now.
Yeah, I think you could probably argue, or I think you would have a pretty good argument saying that the teams that deserve to be in the playoffs got in. Like there wasn't anyone that you felt kind of like got lucky. I mean, all the division winners were the clear winners. The wild card teams were clearly better than the rest. And some people might say the Minnesota Twins don't deserve it, but if you look at how the rest of the American League stacked behind them, it was really anyone's game, and the Twins were the ones who came out and they had big contributors come up, and so
Yep.
I think things would have been different if maybe Mike Trout wasn't injured for 6 weeks for the Angels. The Angels did end up finishing 5 games back, but you never know how they might treat the trade deadline differently if Mike Trout wasn't injured and they had more wins. So the Kansas City Royals, they're about to lose Eric Hosmer, Mike Moustakas, and Lorenzo Cain. So they went in for it, and they had a bad stretch, and they ended up 5 games short too. So I think even though the entire time we were watching it happening, I kept saying the Twins were going to fall off. The Twins just proved me right. Or not right. I'm sorry. No, they did not prove me right. They proved me wrong. They must have heard what I said, and they were like, we're not going to listen to that guy. And they stayed strong enough to win the wild card.
Yeah. Side note, the only team to finish above the Twins, there was only one team to finish above the Twins and not get in the playoffs, and that was the Brewers, who were 1 game back of the Rockies. So very much that 10 of the top 11 teams made the playoffs. I mean, ideally you hope for 10 out of 10, but 10 out of 11 is not bad. Going back to what you said about very clear cut, there weren't really people who got lucky in bad divisions.
Yeah. So we're not going to recap everything in the standings because that'll take too long, and no one cares about that right now. We can talk about that after the playoffs are over. But just real quick, we'll just hit up on the Detroit Tigers with 98 losses, or get the number 1 pick after Pablo Sandoval hit a walk-off home run for the Giants, which allowed them to get which forced them into the number 2 pick. So even whenever Pablo Sandoval does something good, it's actually bad.
Yeah. The Giants have been in last all year, and then the Tigers just decide, hey, we're going to sell off all these pieces. We're going to sell off Martinez, Upton, and Verlander, and only win 4 games in September. So,
was it really only 4 games?
Yeah, they only won 4 games in the month of September.
Crap.
Verlander outwon them. Verlander won 5 games.
Jeez. Oh, man, when they tank hard.
Yeah.
All right, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of the playoffs, let's just recap. We didn't have a podcast last week due to personal reasons on both of our sides, and we're sorry about that. But we are going to go ahead and recap kind of some of the bigger events that happened over the last 2 weeks. First and foremost on my mind is Andrew McCutchen finally hit his first career Grand Slam. That's right, a former MVP. He's been playing in this league for, I think, 8 years or so. He's a home run hitter. He's not a masher, but he hits home runs. And
he's hit 30 before.
Yeah, exactly. But he's never had a Grand Slam. And he's had multiple opportunities. He had multiple opportunities this year alone. And finally, in the second to last game, in Pittsburgh this season, he finally got it, and everyone was cheering, everyone was happy, and you could literally see him mouth the words "finally" whenever he touched home plate. he knew that monkey was on his back, but he finally threw it off. Unfortunately for the Pirates, it was too little, too late. But when the season gets to that point, you take the small victories like that. Also of note, Chris Sale, the starting pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, surpassed 300 strikeouts in a season, which is the first time since Pedro Martinez did it back in 2001. So Sale has been dominant since the beginning of the season, and he stayed dominant through the entire year. And it's been exciting to watch him on a team that is actually competitive. Because before he was on the Chicago White Sox, and he was still good then, but they they never could put anything together to put the pieces around him to actually make a push anywhere. They tried and they failed. Speaking of the White Sox, Jose Abreu became the fourth player with 25 home runs, 100 RBIs in his first 4 seasons, joining people like Albert Pujols. Now, to be fair to those guys that aren't Jose Abreu was like 27 or 28 when he first got into the league because he was a Cuban national and played with the Cuban team.
Yeah.
So put a little asterisk, but it's still very, very impressive.
Yeah. Especially the way his rookie year was just, everybody was like, oh my God, where did this guy come from? And it's like,
yeah, that's kind of the weird thing, like he had a phenomenal rookie year, and then I've always felt like that was his best year, and he never really, like, the league adjusted to him.
yeah.
But then he never adjusted back, and so I was actually really surprised to learn that he had 4 years of 100 RBIs and 4 years of 25 home runs. And when you put him on those White Sox teams, which for the last 2 years have not been very good, it's even more impressive that he has 100 RBIs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially a team that, obviously, if you're trading off Chris Sale, you're building for the future. So to just put up those kind of numbers and still be a White Sox is impressive.
Yeah. Maybe someone will trade for him this offseason. We'll see. I don't really feel like there's been any talk about it yet, and obviously it's really early in the season.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll find out. So last 2 weeks, what struck out to you?
The playoff chase not being as exciting as we had hoped. I mean, we were talking about how much did we talk about that there were 6 teams in the race for the AL wild card, and then the Twins were leading the entire last 6 weeks. They held on to that spot and they didn't let go. So that shocked me a little bit. Judge getting back on track the way he got back on track was very impressive, especially this late in the season.
You wouldn't
just went on a tear.
Go ahead, sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you.
He went on a tear. I mean, he eclipsed 50 home runs. His average is back over 280. He wasn't striking out as much. I mean, the way he recovered it caught my attention.
Yeah, for sure. Like, he was literally hitting like he was back in April and May, and it seemed like the league finally adjusted to him, and he had that horrendous July and August, and people were like, well, I mean, he had the flash of brilliance, and he's not coming back. And no one expected him to really attain that level again, and he hasn't attained that level again because that level is astronomical.
Yeah.
But he's gotten pretty close. I'm looking at his stats right now. So in the last 28 days, he had a 329 average with a 476 on base. All right. But in the last 2 weeks alone, so the last 2 weeks of the season, all right, he has a 417 batting average, a 540 on base percentage, and he's hit 8 home runs in 11 games.
Wow.
He's hitting up at the right time for the New York Yankees.
Yeah. So I knew he was back on track. I didn't realize to that degree.
Yeah. So he's figured it out, and I'm sure the Fox executives are just slobbering at the chance to have Aaron Judge, this big, tall rookie who just crushes home runs in the World Series. So I'm sure I know where the Fox is putting their money right now.
Yeah. They're also probably excited to have Cody Bellinger in the playoffs, another young rookie who mashes home runs for the Dodgers.
Well, yeah. I mean that's the two guys. They both broke the rookie home run records respectively in each league. So,
yep. He hit 39?
I don't know if that's what he finished with. See, Aaron Judge finished with 52. which surpassed Mark McGuire's old record. And then I know Cody
He did
Bellinger.
finish with 39.
Again?
According to the MLB's website, he finished with 39.
Okay, so he did finish with 39, which is the new record. So, and that was and they interviewed him apparently a couple of weeks ago, and they asked, so what did you expect to be at in September? And he's like, I expected to be a September call up in September. Instead, he's very clearly the National League Rookie of the Year. No contest. And the same goes for Aaron Judge. He's going to win the Rookie of the Year. It's not even a competition. But is he going to win the MVP?
I think he should. His biggest competition is Altuve and maybe Trout, but Trout missed a lot of time, so he doesn't stack up in terms of stats. He still has very impressive stats, especially considering how much time he missed. But when you line Judge up next to anybody, his numbers stand out. Like he said, 52 home runs. He had 114 RBIs. He had 128 runs. His OBP was 422. His OPS was the best in the majors at 1071.
So I just want to be clear. So you think he's gonna win, or if you had a vote? Okay, so you think he's gonna win?
If I had a vote, I'd vote for him. I still think they might lean Altuve. I still think the people with votes would lean Altuve because the Astros are the better team. He's beaten him in batting average. He's been around longer. He's more established. So I just feel like they're going to lean Altuve, even though I feel like Judge should win.
Yeah, I could see that. If I had to vote, I'm going Aaron Judge. And he's been more impressive across the board than Jose Altuve, and I love Jose Altuve, and I think he's a great ball player. But Aaron Judge bounced back with, like we already talked about, he bounced back and he showed that he can make that adjustment. And he's over the season. It wasn't, earlier in the season I would have voted for Jose Altuve because for me, my MVP vote goes to the guy who was the best the entire year, not the guy who was best for the first half. And then his first half was so awesome that it carried him over for the rest of the season. But Aaron Judge has now built on in that last month and a half, he, got back into playing superstar level. And so I think he's earned himself the MVP. And I think that they'll vote for him as MVP because let's admit it, let's just see. It's the sexy pick. All right, Rookie of the Year,
That's
also
true.
MVP. And then another thing is there's a lot more talent on the hitting side of things in Houston than there is in New York. And
That's true.
I would argue that Jose Altuve's numbers get a little boost from having all those good hitters around him. All right. Aaron Judge, he's not playing in a vacuum, but he's also not playing with Carlos Correa or George Springer, So
no, he does have Gary Sanchez, who is one of the better hitting catchers in the majors.
Yeah, but he's
Andy
a better
Gregorio stepped up his game, but I would rather take Correa and Springer over Sanchez and Gregorius.
Yeah. So I think for those reasons, I think because of who he, and as much as I hate to say it, he also plays for the Yankees. And so that, I think, is going to give him a little bit of bonus points. And it's been a while since a Yankees player has won the MVP. I think A-Rod was the last to do it in 2009, I think.
I think that's right.
I could be wrong, though. I don't memorize MVPs or New York MVPs at that. But let's move on to the National League MVP race. It's a little bit closer, a little less clear cut.
It should be Votto.
Of course, the Reds fan thinks it should be Votto.
Look at this dude's numbers, though. I mean, he had a 320 average. His OBP was excuse me. I need to pull these stats back up. But he had the best OBP in the majors. He had the most walks in the majors. His OPS led the NL. He had Okay, 320 average, 454 OBP. He reached base 321 times this season. Like, come on. His slugging percentage was 578. He reached base in 150 of the 162 games. And his WAR was 6.6, which is in the top 10. It's only a few tenths of a point shy of Giancarlo Stanton, who would him and probably Paul Goldschmidt are the other two front runners. But I like Votto. He's got 36 home runs, 100 RBIs. That slash line he put up, the amount of walks, he walked almost twice as much as he struck out. I mean, the dude, I know the Reds aren't a playoff team, but without him, the Reds are for sure in the number one pick spot. Instead,
Yeah,
they're almost a 70-win team.
Votto was amazing. And if you're going to pick the best player in the league, then yeah, it was Joey Votto. I'm going to give you that. However, we all know the MVP is not based off who the actual best player in the league was. It's who made the biggest difference for a team, and your team also making the playoffs or maybe even getting super close to the playoffs. And because of that, because he played for, the not 70 win, did they make 70 wins?
No, they made
68, the 68 win Reds, it kind of disqualifies Joey Votto. However, he's going
most
to,
are only saying it though.
yeah, he's he's going to get a lot of down ballot votes, and the fact that the National League is a little wishy washy as far as who the actual top player is, I think that might contribute to him maybe making a surprise win. Because if you look at the top of the list right now in the National League, you start off with the guy who's got according to Fangraphs, the two guys tied for WAR is Anthony Rendon, who had a crazy good season, and Giancarlo Stanton. Giancarlo Stanton hit a crap ton of home runs. He almost broke 60. He was one short of getting 60 home runs, all right? But he didn't play for a playoff team, and they weren't even really all that close to making it.
They were for a split second.
Yeah, they were in it because he went on that tear where he hit it was like 10 in 10 days or something like that. It was something crazy.
Yeah.
But they didn't make it. So he, kind of gets downgraded because, he wasn't on a playoff team. Anthony Rendon does play for a playoff team. But what I think hurts him a lot is Daniel Murphy, Bryce Harper, Jason Worth, Trey
Ryan
Turner.
Zimmerman.
So many good hitters on that team make him look so much better. And I can see, if you're sitting there and you got to make your vote, you're like, well, I'm not so sure. After that, it's last year's MVP, Chris Bryant, who had a surprisingly solid season. I feel like he's been quiet all year, not making the biggest splash, and maybe that's
moved
just
him to the 2 spot, so he wasn't going to get the flashy numbers that you usually get from the 3 spot.
He was one short of 30 home runs, but I mean, he put up good numbers.
Yeah.
I think the problem here is that he's going to get hurt by the fact that he won the MVP last year.
Yeah.
And I don't think people necessarily like voting for the same guy year after year, unless it's Mike Trout, because Mike Trout has been unequivocally the best player. But with Chris Bryant, it's like, well, you were better last year, or you were splashier last year. And then after that, it's Joey Votto, and then you got Charlie Blackmon, and then a whole bunch of other guys who all have everyone. I think in the National League MVP race has a big asterisk for whatever reason that could tell people, maybe I shouldn't vote for you, or maybe you're not the top player.
It's a really weird year. Usually there's at least one clear-cut front-runner candidate that's on a playoff team toward the top in a lot of statistical categories. For a while, this was Goldschmidt, but his numbers have kind of taken a drop here lately, and he's all of a sudden he was toward the lead in WAR, and all of a sudden it just kind of stalled out, and he's 1.2 WAR behind even Votto. 1.3, my bad. 1.3 behind Votto, 1.2 behind Blackman. In that's going to hurt him. WAR has become very popular over the last however many years, and if you don't stack up in WAR, like if you're not toward the top, it hurts your case.
Yeah, so Goldschmidt, who I wanted to see win it, has kind of gone the opposite way. We just talked about how impressive Aaron Judge has been over the last month. Well, in the last month, Paul Goldschmidt has hit a $189 in batting average. His on base percentage is significantly below 300 in the last 28 days. In the last 2 weeks, all those stats are even lower. So it's he's gotten cold at the wrong time. So the Diamondbacks need him to find it tomorrow night, Wednesday night, if they want to advance.
Yeah. He's a big part of that offense. Oh, and I'd like to note, too, that Votto actually not just played all 162, he started all 162. There's nobody else that can make that claim that's toward the top of the race. Just saying.
Okay. If I had a vote, I'm voting Anthony Rendon.
I'm voting Votto.
And, I can respect that. I really can. I
think Stanton will win. I think Votto should win. I think Rendon's going to get hurt because he plays for the Nationals.
Yeah. I'm not even going to bother predicting who's going to win because I have no idea. Like, I really don't. Like, I really don't. It really is. It's well, we just talked about it, but it's insane. So let's move on to the Cy Young race. And we'll stay in the National League. We thought this was going to be a lot closer when September started. Clayton Kershaw and Max Scherzer were really going toe to toe, and then Clayton he didn't do bad. He just kind of slowed down a little bit. Max Scherzer kept it up, and I think it's pretty clear it's going to be Scherzer. His ERA is 2.51. Surprisingly, his teammate Steven Strasburg has a 2.52 ERA, so they're like neck and neck, which is going to be that's a scary 1-2 combo in the playoffs. I don't want to be the Cubs right now, but Scherzer also pitched 200 innings, and
Strasburg only hit 175.
Yeah, so he has more innings, he has more strikeouts, all of his peripherals
better whip.
Yeah, everything. This one's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, Scherzer, I think should and will. Kershaw will probably get some votes just because his ERA is definitely better. Although Kershaw did a lot more home runs in 25 fewer innings, almost 26 fewer innings. His average was worse. His whip was only slightly worse than Scherzer, so I think he'll get some first place votes, but I think Scherzer takes it by a fairly healthy margin.
Yeah, I do too. So we really don't need to talk about the NL Cy Young very much. There's not a whole lot going on. So let's shift over to the American League. And
it doesn't get much closer, though, here.
Yeah, it's just so much better than last year where we had it was just a big muddled mess, even worse than the National League MVP. Arguably, Justin Verlander should have won and got kind of screwed over by a guy putting in his turning in his votes literally 2 weeks early before the season had even ended. And so he didn't basically give Verlander the 2 starts he had, which were, I'm pretty sure, like 8 innings and like no runs, like really good starts. And so that's how we ended up with a who was it? It's the Red Sox player.
Porcello.
Yeah, Rick Porcello. That just leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Just led to Kate Upton tweeting about baseball.
Yeah. But let's talk about this year, all right? So you've got the sexy Chris Sale, Red Sox, 300 strikeouts, first time since 2001 as option 1. He's got a 2.9 ERA. He threw 214 innings. He's been dominant all season. And then you got Corey Kluber of the Cleveland Indians.
He's my pick.
He barely went over 200. I'll let you explain the rest.
He, like you said, he went over 200, but his ERA is 2.25.
Whew.
He has a .87 WHIP, which is a full tenth of a point better than Sale. Yes, he does have, was it 43 fewer strikeouts? I mean, in 9 innings, that's pretty substantial. Given even with having pitched fewer innings, it's still definite that Sale was the better strikeout pitcher. But Kluber has more wins. He has a better ERA. He has a better WHIP. He has a better opponent average. His opponents are hitting less than 200 against him. And he doesn't allow walks. He only walked 36 batters.
Wow.
In 200 innings. He's my pick for sure.
Yeah, Kluber's my pick too, and I think he should win. I can see some votes being cast Sale's way, just because he's been dominant over previous seasons. He's got the 300 strikeouts. Some people could say he played in a better division in the AL East, where he's playing in smaller ballparks. But I know I said it earlier. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I know I said earlier, with the MVP, I want a guy to be good the entire season. Well, with the Cy Young, I still want that, but I'm not knocking having a very strong finish, which Kluber undoubtedly had he was kind of he was doing well up until I think it was August or September or August, and then he just turned it on, and he was like, it's game time, and there's no. It's not a coincidence that when the Indians went on their crazy long win streak, that Kluber was also in his groove.
Oh yeah, he went on a bunch of starts where it was like 6 and no runs, 8 and 1, 10 strikeouts, 11 strikeouts, 9 strikeouts. Like he was, like you said, he was pretty good, very good for most of the season, and then the last couple of months he was just, this is the clear cut Cy Young. He took it from Chris Sale. Chris Sale didn't give it up.
Yeah, no, he earned it. This is not going to be gifted to him.
Yeah, yeah, there's no other way to phrase it.
Okay, so before we get into the playoffs, I know we're all ready to talk about the playoffs. Before we get there, I want to talk about some front office stuff. So there's some big firings over the last couple of weeks. Brad Ausmus, the manager for the Detroit Tigers, has been fired. Not a big surprise.
Detroit fans' delight.
Yeah, right. Terry Collins, because this is New York and you can't do anything simple in New York, Terry Collins was supposed to be fired. Then it turns out the owners said Terry Collins can't be fired. We're not going to fire him. And then Terry Collins resigned on the very last day of the season.
Yeah.
Why can't things be simple?
To be fair to Collins, it was more his training staff's fault.
Yeah, well, and now the rest of the training staff is still being paid currently, but the New York Mets have gotten rid of their head of the training staff. He has been fired. So maybe their woes via everyone hitting the disabled list are now over. That remains to be seen in 2018.
Yeah.
And then, oh yeah, you want to say something about the Mets?
The Mets, they were looking like a solid wild card team. Maybe if everything went right, they could challenge the Nationals for the division, and then injury. The wheels just fell off, and there's not much else to say.
If you go online and you are a Mets fan and you go and read their injury report, like throughout the whole season, first off, it's a novel. Second, it's a horror story because it really is, especially if you look at the dates. It's kind of crazy how as soon as one guy gets back, or like maybe even like, oh, I even forgot that guy was injured, because he's been gone for so long. Then another person gets hurt, and it's just piled on them. So before we go to playoffs, I want to talk about the one big firing, or not firing, but the resignation that just happened 2 days ago. The Braves general manager, and please forgive me if I say his last name wrong, John Coppola has resigned. He resigned like quite literally minutes after it was reported that there was some sort of stink regarding his actions as a general manager in the international free agent market. And generally, you're not going to have somebody resign that fast unless it's either very, very true or very, very big.
Or it's total coincidence.
Yeah, or maybe, yeah. But no, he's gone.
Yeah.
All the news coming out right now says there's been a lot of shady dealings, specifically via like underage agreements with Latin American players. The news hasn't come out yet, but all the beat writers and all the everyone else is basically saying this is just the tip of that iceberg. Like just this little bit of just him signing like one top prospect. Like this is the beginning, and if you're a Braves fan, I would be scared because you don't know what they're going to take away.
Sheesh, first we get the FBI in college basketball. Now we got this. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks.
Yeah. So keep an eye out. We will try to have the Armchair Baseball account tweet out any relevant news, breaking news, and I'll be on it. I'll be looking up because I want to know what happened. I want to know what's going on. How is this going to change baseball? Okay, let's get to the meat of the matter. Let's talk playoffs.
Playoffs. All right. Who do you think's going to last a while? Who do you think might be a surprise to make the World Series?
A surprise to make the World Series. Honestly, for me, I feel like the only pick that would be surprising would be one of the wild card teams. Because I can definitely see any of the other division winners because they all were pretty solid. Although, I would say that if the Chicago Cubs made it again, I would be a little surprised by that. But if I'm going to go with a dark horse pick, I'm going to go with the Diamondbacks.
Interesting. Even with Goldschmidt?
Even though Goldschmidt has been bad, even though Goldschmidt was bad, J.J. Martinez won National League Player of the Month. So I want to go with him. If I have to pick a dark horse pick, if I have to like choose a team that that's the one I'm gonna put my money on. If I'm actually making World Series predictions, I'm gonna have to adjust it accordingly. But if you want a team to say, hey, they weren't that great during the season, and that they aren't necessarily they're definitely not favorites. So that would be the team I would pick. What about you? If you had to pick a dark horse, who you got?
Maybe the Red Sox.
I can see that
because, like I said, they got Sale, they've got the young guns, they've got Rick Porcello, but they've got David Price in the bullpen now. They've kind of flown under the radar because of the dominance of the Astros and the Indians. So maybe they might make people go, huh, forgot they were in the playoffs. But they could make a run. They've got the pitching staff to do it.
They got the offense too.
Yeah, they're a strong team most years, but this isn't most years.
Yeah. So if we're talking real predictions though, I think I'm gonna go with the Cleveland Indians win the American League pennant. I think that pitching staff is just too good, and then I think I've got the National League's a little harder, and so my pick's gonna be a little bit more of I want to see it, and I can see it happening, and I'm gonna go with the Nationals. They got a good offense. They've got a great 1-2 combo in pitching. Their reliever Sean Doolittle their closer Sean Doolittle just won reliever of the month for National League, so the bullpen is no longer a problem for them. And so I can totally see it. The Dodgers have looked weak in the month of September, and then there's also I want to, just like last year when the Indians and the Cubs played and they hadn't won in a collective 148 years or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I want to see the two teams, the Nationals, who've never won or even been to the World Series as a franchise, and then also the team with the biggest drought. I love that kind of stuff. I live for that kind of World Series.
I'm gonna have to agree with you on the Nationals. The Cubs, the rotation, it's still kind of, it's not as good as it was last year, and they just don't seem as good as last year for whatever reason. I mean, obviously they didn't have nearly as many wins, but I think the Nationals, like 1-2 punch, Scherzer and Strasburg will get the best of them, and it'll be very hard to come back against a team that has Rendon, Murphy, Zimmerman, Worth, Harper, even though he's just back from injury. I think the Nationals take that, and then I do think if the Dodgers make the NLCS, I think they beat the Dodgers. The AL side, I'm predicting the winner of the Indians series. I'm predicting the winner of the Indians. If it happens to be Indians Yankees, I'm predicting the winner of that series takes the pennant.
Oh, okay, sorry. Say that again. So you're saying either
So,
the Indians or the Yankees. So you're saying if the Yankees win that series, the Yankees are going all the way.
yes.
Okay.
I think they benefit greatly from a shorter rotation because they've got Cervino, they've got Gray, and now they've got a lot of options at the third spot.
Well, and they've got Masahiro Tanaka. He finally he's putting it back
That's
together
true.
again. He had a really good start last weekend. So, yeah, and then, honestly, I forgot Sonny Gray was with the New York Yankees. So I was thinking the rotation is really bad, but actually the short rotation is actually really good. And, they've got that monster of a bullpen. They might be pulling a literally a 2014 Kansas City Royals where, they're the wild card team and they go all the way to the World Series.
Yeah. And I have a friend who's a huge Yankees fan who's been saying this is like the 1996 team. This team reminds me so much of the 1996 team. And I'm starting to believe it. I'm starting to see it. So I think if they can beat the Indians, I think they can take the pennant.
Yeah, I could see it. But I mean, I think Houston Astros come out of the Boston Red Sox series, and I think that only the Indians have the pitching rotation to to suffocate what has been a pretty historic offense in Houston. So
that's fair. So, well, we talked about who we think is going to make it all the way. Who do you think falls flat?
Yeah, I think the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers are going to be kind of the team that everyone expects. The team that won 104 wins. The team that at one point was on the record or on their way to record wins. And they've got pitching, they've got hitting, they've got a bullpen.
Yeah.
But like I said before, they've been a little stale.
Yep.
And then whoever comes out of that Rockies Diamondback series, as much as they don't want to face the Dodgers, again, they also benefit from having seen them like 100 times during the regular season already.
Right.
So it's not like oh no, it's the Dodgers. We're facing the Dodgers. Like, no, you guys see the Dodgers every month. And honestly, it might be helpful that that whenever they play the Dodgers, that they have to use their second or maybe even third rotational pitcher, because Clayton Kershaw is really good. And you know what? Maybe that's one where you just throw out the bad pitcher on game one and just go ahead and say, you know what? We're not going to win the one against Kershaw, not without having our best starter out there. I'm not saying give up on the game, but in that case,
JD and his left-handed hitting.
Yeah, for real. But if you think about it that way, then in game two, you can throw out Robbie Ray, who's had a stellar year.
Yeah.
And then Robbie Ray faces up against, I don't even know who's the second guy
You
in that room.
Darvish.
Yu Darvish or Alex Wood, probably.
Yeah.
And so obviously no one wants to face Yu Darvish in the playoffs, but that's a heck of a lot more winnable than Clayton Kershaw, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're in game three. Game three is winnable, against Alex Wood. And then the Dodgers are probably going to go with the fourth starter, and that's when you can bring out the ace that you used to win the game. This is, of course, assuming the Diamondbacks win the wild card.
Yes.
You have Greinke go out to game four, and hopefully you're already up 2-1, and then you just need one win, and you're good to go.
Yeah. I think the Dodgers are probably the most vulnerable 100-win team we've seen in a while. If you just get Kershaw, he has some bad history in the playoffs. You might be able to take advantage of that, especially if the Diamondbacks win. You throw out JD Martinez against him, and JD has an absolutely incredible year against left-handed pitching. Then you've got maybe Goldschmidt gets back in a groove because he's familiar with the pitchers he's facing. So it's not out of the question that the Dodgers lose in the divisional round. If you haven't noticed, they're my pick too. So they're a vulnerable 100-win team, as strange as it sounds. It seems like the Indians, it would take a Herculean effort to topple. The Dodgers, it just doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to find a team. Find a team, to say in the American League to say is like, well, I think they're going to have a short exit, and then not be like, well, that's not like.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me say that without stuttering. To pick a team in the American League and be like, well, I think maybe they might stumble, and then have someone be like, what? I don't see that. Like, yeah, it'd be surprising if the Houston Astros lost, but they're also going against the pitching of, the Boston Red Sox, who they aren't slouching on pitching, and so and Houston has had struggles in the past this last season. So I think the Dodgers are probably the pretty easy. Yeah, they could definitely topple. The Giant could be toppled there.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So my must-watch playoff game for the next week, which would cover the American League wildcard game, the National League wildcard game, and then basically the beginning of or most of the divisional round, if not all of the divisional round. And my personal must-watch game, which I will definitely be watching no matter how late it is, even though it might be in the West Coast time zone, I'm going to be watching the Rockies at the Diamondbacks. As a Pirates writer and a Pirates fan, I've experienced many a wild card game, and as a fan, they are absolutely no fun. No, don't. No, I just don't want that.
Yeah.
As a fan of baseball, wild card games are the best. The fans are like super into the game. Every pitch is just this. It's game 7. It's literally just game 7. It's everything is high intensity. It's
That's
just
why
the
they suck
level of
as a fan
drama.
of your team.
It's wearing on your body. So if you're listening to this podcast and you are a fan of one of these wildcard teams, all right, as someone who's done it multiple times, okay, drink plenty of water and or alcohol. Okay, you're gonna need it in case your team loses, and if you win, then you feel even better. You can try and eat food, but I've never been able to really eat anything down while my team was losing or winning. I'm too nervous, but drinking's a lot easier. And then be somewhere safe. Be in a safe environment, because the last thing you want to hear after your team loses is have some dude who doesn't even pay attention to baseball. It's like, oh, that sucks. Your team lost. And then you just want to deck them. Sorry. The PTSD, guys. I'm sorry.
I mean, you beat the Reds though, so how much PTSD?
Yeah, but then we lost the next two.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I want to see. So John Gray is pitching against Zach Greinke.
That'll be fun.
It should be extremely fun. It's played in Arizona, so I don't actually expect it to be a this really crazy good pitching battle. I expect it to be kind of a home run hitting fest, which is also fun. Um, and honestly, whenever you watch playoff games, wild card games are just must watch because
Yep,
in I think the last 4 years that we've had wild card games, there's been very few bad ones. All right, the
that's
only
true.
bad, and by bad I mean boring. All right, because whenever your team loses, it's bad. But the
Yeah,
only boring game that I can think of is the Giants crushing the Pittsburgh Pirates 8-0, and
that must
that's
have
the
been
only
awful.
that's the only boring wild card game I can think of because whenever the Pirates played the Reds, I mean that was a close game the whole time. It wasn't decided. The Cubs Pirates game got a little out of hand, but there was some fighting, so that was fun. Um, Last year's game, the Mets and the Giants, they went 8 innings before even scoring a run, and then I can't even remember the guy's name. Gillespie was the guy who
Yeah,
hit the home run for the Giants. Like I've never heard of this guy, but he's this playoff hero. And of course, there was the 2014 extra innings between the A's and the Royals, and I could go on and on. Playoff game or wild card games are must watch
yeah.
every time.
So mine would be the AL wildcard game if this had come out today, but since that will already be over, I'm gonna go with the series featuring the Indians and the wild card winner, which I'm predicting is the Yankees. So if it's that Yankees Indians matchup, that is going to be a fun series to watch. You got the Indians rotation going against that Yankees lineup with Aaron Judge. Get some of that, some of that high level hitting versus pitching matchup. See if the old adage holds true that good pitching beats good hitting. But and then see how the Yankees fare with that shorter rotation. They don't have to. They're really solid in the first 2-3 spots. It's after that that they get shaky. So if you watch that series, it would be it'd be they're kind of almost the antithesis of each other, but they still have some similarities. But I would pick the AL wildcard game, but it's going to be over by the time this happens.
All right, so let's do wild card predictions and divisional predictions. All right, and so I'll go first. I've got the Yankees beating the Twins. I think it's going to be a lot closer than everyone thinks it'll be. But the Twins' rotation is shaky. So Irvin Santana, who's had a good year at the beginning of the year, kind of went back to norm. Isn't really a guy you want pitching in a wild card game. And then the fact that they don't get Miguel Sano back because he literally got back like 3 games ago and he's not warm enough. So whenever you're
Yeah,
without arguably your best player, that makes it a lot harder to win that game. So I'm going to go with the Yankees. On the National League side of things, I think it's the Diamondbacks. And then divisional, I'm going to have the Nationals over the Cubs. As much as I'd love to see the Diamondbacks over the Dodgers, I think it's going to be the Dodgers. And then I got Houston over Boston, Cleveland over New York.
I would say those seem pretty vanilla, but this year it just seems like it's going to be a vanilla year. Even though I'm with you on the Diamondbacks and Rockies, with the Diamondbacks beating the Rockies. I'm with you on the Yankees beating the Twins. I do have Houston over Boston. I do have Washington over Chicago. I think the wild card series versus the top teams will get more interesting than people think because, like we said, just talked about, the Dodgers are probably the most vulnerable 100 win team that I can think of. And I think the Dodgers, having seen them, have an advantage in that maybe some of their slumping players get back on track. Maybe their hitters just figured something out. Like, hey guys, I saw this in the tape and whatever. Like, maybe they figure something out that puts them over the top. Of course, that could work for the Dodgers too. Like if you're like, hey guys, Robbie Ray does this when he's about to throw a curveball, or
Yeah.
um, but I think the NLDS goes to 5 games for Arizona Dodgers. I'm gonna take the Dodgers though.
See, and I would agree. I would think I'm not saying that the Dodgers are going to sweep the floor with the Diamondbacks. I know, but yeah, it's lame, it's vanilla. Where's the fun? But I do think that was like one series that's going to go with the 5 games. And here's where I'll get crazy for you. All right, I think the Nationals will sweep the Cubs. I'm going to have the Indians in 4 games, and I'm going to have the Boston Houston go 5.
Okay. I'm gonna have Houston actually take that in 4. I think the only game they might lose is Keuchel versus Sale. I think that's the
Actually,
matchup.
it's Chris Sale versus Justin Verlander.
Okay, that gets a lot tougher. I don't know why I thought Keuchel was going, but I still think the Astros take it in 4. I think the Red Sox are too good to get swept with that rotation in the playoffs, but I still think the Astros win pretty handily. I'm going to go with the Yankees in 5 over the Indians. Bold prediction time. Yankees take it in 5 over the Indians.
That's a hot take. Sizzling.
It'll probably come back to bite me, but shoot your shot.
Yep. Well, that's going to do it for us. If you agree or maybe even disagree with us, why don't you start an argument over Twitter and hit us up at their respective team accounts. I'm at Armchair Pirates. Johnny is at the Armchair Reds. And we'll definitely discuss it with you if you guys want. We love baseball. We love playoff baseball even more. So we love to talk. So thanks for listening. Remember to check out the other podcasts provided by Armchair All Americans. Also, make sure to visit the website. We got plenty of articles, and we cover all the sports, not just baseball. So you can also tweet the main account at Armchair All Americans, and that's gonna do it for us. It's October, guys. Take a seat. Watch some playoff baseball. Do yourself a favor.